Hello, I'm Tiffany Parks, and this is A Bittersweet Moment with Katy Sewell.
Hello, this is The Bittersweet Life. I'm Katy Sewell, and this is your midweek Bittersweet Moment. But first, as you know, if you listen to this show, listener support is the number one reason this show still exists. If you've never given to the show and you love it, please consider a donation. You can find links to donate in the show notes or at thebittersweetlife.net. And before I get started, I just want to thank our newest patron, Zoe, and also Linda for supporting the show. Thank you so much for joining us, and we really appreciate you. We really do. So on Monday's show, we put in a request at the very end of the episode asking you to send us some of your favorite sounds. Doesn't have to be anything dramatic, just something that you hear on a regular basis around your house that evokes some sort of feeling. And to demonstrate just how easy it is to find sounds around the house, sounds that might demonstrate something to you, I thought I would take an impromptu tour of the sounds of my office and see what occurs. Just as a way to show you that you can whip out your smartphone at any time and capture a sound whenever it strikes you. And also, as you know, I always have a secret mission of trying to get you to not only see the world around you, but listen to it. Now, not all the sounds in my office elicit a warm response, but even still, here's a little portrait into my day-to-day life through your ears. So every day, one of the first things that I do is warm up my kettle. I've kind of given up coffee, except for on the weekends, and so instead, I do tea. And I promise you, this is not because Tiffany hates coffee or is so in love with tea. Let's take a listen. It's an electric kettle, so it's going to take a little time to get going. So now that it is turned on, let's see what else we find. As you know, I'm a radio person, and so I have radios everywhere. And it's generally tuned, at least the one in my office, to the radio station that I still work for on an on-call basis. But before I moved to Rome, it was where I worked full-time. KUOW Public Radio in Seattle.
Competitors most.
I haven't heard any complaints.
PFAS wax, also called fluoro or fluorinated wax, does make skiers go faster than older alternatives, especially in cross-country races. But research shows...
So that's KUOW radio in the middle of the afternoon. Now, my radio is not only a radio, it is also a record player. And oftentimes when I'm working, I do listen to some records. And here's a random classic that just happens to be on the record player right now. Something I purchased at a thrift store. You can still hear my tea heating up in the background. Now here's the problem with my record player. Can you hear? Oh, it's starting to behave now. It has a bit of a hitch to it. It's getting old, and it sometimes takes itself a little time to warm up. So it's almost like the song sounds like it's slurring, like it's had a big night of drinking. So that's another sound in my office. Tea still heating up. I might have put a little bit too much water in there. With that click, I now know that my water is ready to go. Then there's the sound of my teapot, which you wouldn't think has a sound, but it does. That's what the lid sounds like falling onto it. This is a sterling silver teapot that used to be quite beautiful. I've now used it a lot, and I also have not been polishing it. But it belonged to my great-grandmother. It has actual bone in the handle to keep the heat from conducting so that I can actually pick it up. And she was the mother of my grandmother, who is still alive. She's 103 years old. And I inherited this when she downsized to a smaller place, got rid of her home, and rather than keep it on a shelf in a bag, I decided that I was just going to use it every day. There's that lid again. So while that's steeping, let's see what else has sound around this office. One thing I don't know if you can hear is that I have 2 hourglasses. They are meant to mark time so that I don't sit at my desk for too long. One is very large and full of black sand, and one is quite small and filled with white sand. The large one is about a half an hour. The white one, the little one, is about 5 minutes. And the idea goes that I'm supposed to get up every half an hour and either stretch or walk around. And when I'm walking around, I can use the small one to time that. I'm going to flip it over and we'll see if we can actually hear it. So that is actual sand through the hourglass. Another thing in my office that I typically use, particularly if I'm writing rather than doing radio, is incense. It is the easiest way to reset a space that I have ever found. Just change the scent of it, and sometimes it puts you in a different mood. So the incense I always use is a Japanese cypress. As they advertise it, experience the fresh scent and tranquility of a cypress forest. Okay, and now I stick it in this bowl that's full of gravel that was given to me by the author Robert Fulghum. And in a few minutes, the room's mood will be reset. It's interesting to me that sometimes the sounds that would be so familiar, like perhaps some of the most familiar sounds, are not really notable to us unless we really seriously pay attention and think about it. Like, for instance, this sound. That is the sound of me opening a drawer in one of my desks. Now, totally unremarkable in a way, but I have been working at this desk since I was a high school student. This is where I wrote my papers growing up. This desk has been in my life, and it is really ugly. It is an old banker's desk. At least I'm told it's really ugly. Me, I look past all the flaking paint and perceived dents and ugliness, and all I see is this object that has been in my life for a really, really long time. And the drawers all sound a little different. That's the one where I keep my radio equipment. That one's heavier. That's where I have all the extra equipment that I never use. And the heaviest of all, the one that holds all the journals that I wrote when I was in Rome. Just a couple more before I let you go to go explore your own homes and rooms and find out what sounds you're hearing in them, and maybe give a little thought to what those sounds remind you of. If you have a great sound, if you record one, it doesn't even have to be a great sound. I just opened a drawer and you listen to it. Record it for us on your voice memo app. Send it to us through email, bittersweetlifepodcast@gmail.com. You can even record your own voice describing what this sound is. And we would love to use those sounds on an upcoming show. So start listening to the world around you. Sort out which sounds elicit feelings within you and record one or two of them for us and send them in. Here's another one. So I have a window that opens in a way that a cat could easily fall out of it. So I have a screen that now sits in the window blocking them. So every time I actually want to open the window, I got to pull the screen out, reach down, and you pop the window open. And then all of a sudden, you can really hear the world outside. Obviously, it's raining today. It's also extremely windy. And I have a bird feeder out my back window. So when I'm working on the podcast or working on writing, I can watch the birds coming and going and also hear them. I've also stuck a feeder to the window, and if it was a more exciting time in the afternoon, both cats would be sitting on my desk trying to attack those birds, which I do not allow them access to. But let's take a listen again to outdoors. And to sign off and in tribute to my childhood, growing up, listening to records and tapes and all sorts of things. Let's go out with one of the more unusual records that perhaps a child would grow up to and imagine all sorts of worlds listening to. I don't know if any of you will be able to recognize this. It is the soundtrack to a movie. 10 points if you can name it. And my sisters, you don't count because I know you know it. Let's see if my record player is actually willing to play something on tempo. Here we go. And until next time, this is The Bittersweet Life. Get out there and listen. Send me some sounds. bittersweetlifepodcast@gmail.com.